Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the second episode in Thematic Transformations in, and the work in which we are speaking, in which the thematic transformations happen, is Shostakovich's Symphony No. 5, just the first movement. There are all kinds of things we could say about the others or the rest of the symphony, but as I said, in this series I'm focusing on specific events, things that are, I think particularly wonderful and fascinating to listen to, and not so as to cause some sort of like overload. I want you to really pay attention to these aspects because they are absolutely wonderful. And Shostakovich's Fifth is a terrific case study because, Shostakovich is known as a composer of sort of hysterical Soviet emotion. And his music is that way. It's hysterical and it's emotional. There's no question about it. It's passionate and it's intense and it's gripping and it has all those things, but it also has superb symphonic construction. And the way that Shostakovich achieves his incredible intensity and passion, as often as not, is through the strict tools of musical craft. I mean, the idea here, some people are, form whores like me. I'm a form whore. I'm very interested in the way things are built and structured, but more than that, it's not because it's just interesting, abstractly to consider the shape. It's because the shape serves the expressive purpose. That is, the incredible intensity that Shostakovich achieves is created through his handling of form, through the way that he treats his thematic material, and through the transformations that thematic material undergoes. And that makes it all the more powerful. Think of it this way. You can write a happy theme, then you can write a sad theme. But it says so much more. It's so much more affecting. The sad theme is going to be so much more intense if you know that at one point it was a happy theme and it's become a sad theme. And the process of becoming is what gives the sadness, when it arrives, its poignancy. So that's why I'm so interested in how this happens, because the incredible expressive intensity of this music is a product of Shostakovich working with his material. And this first movement is an absolute incredible case in point, because it's in what we call monothematic sonata form. Ooh, baby! How's that for technical? A monothematic sonata form is really very simple. Some of you who know what sonata form is, I mean, you get the sense. It's a form which is based on the binary opposition of thematic material in different key areas. And those things have a conflict. I mean, there's a duality there that works itself out in what we call a development section, and then is resolved in what we call a recapitulation, where everything is presented in the original key, and there should be some sort of satisfying return. Now, the satisfying return in this case is actually, it is satisfying and peaceful, but then there's a ghostly coda, which is very spooky. So, the happiness is equivocal, let's put it that way, at best, that satisfaction that you get at the end. Anyway, monothematic sonata form is a movement, large something, which is based on a single theme or idea. That is, the second subject, the one that's supposed to be somehow opposed to the first, is created out of the same stuff, the same material as the first subject. So there's great thematic economy in monothematic sonata forms. Composers are working with smaller bits, and for that reason I only need 3 musical examples in this talk to show you exactly what Shostakovich is doing. And once you know what he's doing, you're just going to be dazzled, I guarantee it, because it is just so incredible how he does this. It really is. The way he handles it is by taking the opening idea of the symphony. And here it is. Let's listen to the opening idea of the symphony. It's based on 2-note sniglets which are repeated sort of canonically. Ba-da, doo-doo, da-da, doo-doo, ba-doo, doo-doo, da-doo, like that. It's really very simple, and that's about all it is. Here's the way Shostakovich does it. Now, that was Vasily Petrenko, by the way, with the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic on Naxos. Now, you noticed at the end of that little example, you heard da 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 dum dum bum bum. All right, that's another motive, different from the opening one, and then the opening da 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 becomes an accompaniment, doo 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 ba doo doo doo, like that. The movement is permeated by that little two-note thingy. And the little two-note thingy is the main idea in that first subject. So you can do a lot with two notes. I mean, you can arrange them all kinds of ways. There follows, after that introductory gesture, a whole nother tune, which is completely unrelated. It's built in a different way. It's a different melody. And that becomes the first subject, this whole complex of ideas. But the most important one is the opening. Ba-da, da-dum, da-da. And so that first subject goes on for a while. And then we get to eventually what is the second theme or second subject. Now, the second subject consists entirely or almost entirely of the first subject, just stretched out or augmented. For example, if I double the length, instead of da-da, we have da-da. That's an augmentation. Get it? That's the musical term. It means you play it in longer notes. So if we play this thing, da-da-da-da, you get the second subject. There's a different accompaniment. There's chum, 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 chum underneath, and quiet details, the delicate little chords and the harp behind it. It's played high in the violins. It's very wistful. It's very cool. Whereas the first subject was all thrust and passion, this version of it, in augmented notes, is absolutely still and numb and passionless. It couldn't be more different, but it's the same music. That's what makes it so fabulous. So here it is. Now, here too, you'll notice that Shostakovich endows this second subject, which is the first subject, with its own accessory ideas too. Da 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 da. And this ominous accompaniment, do 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 do, three notes, da 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 da, ba da da, like that. That too will become important later on. So when I say something is monothematic, it's a great mistake to believe that it only has one theme. It doesn't only have one theme. You can have a dozen themes, but the essence of it, it's constructed out of the material that we heard at the beginning of the symphony, the first subject, the first idea, with whatever other accessories the composer decides to pack in for whatever reason. We can't be too dogmatic about it. But it is still monothematic because you have the same music recurring in both the first and second subjects. That's really all that means, that technical term. I don't want to make too much of it. But the marvelous thing is that it's the same music. And Shostakovich has disguised it a little bit by what we call octave displacement. It's a wonderful term. In other words, if instead of going, the opening was da-da, da-da. Well, if you do that an octave higher, it goes da-da, da-da, like that. You just move the registers. The notes are the same, but you change how high or how low each two-note sniglet is. And by doing that, Shostakovich is able to give that second subject a totally different character, a totally different feeling of lightness and spaciness, whereas the other thing was in the cellos and basses. It was all low and darkness and loudness. So that's how he crafts these two subjects out of exactly the same music. And the thing to keep in mind is that idea of augmentation. The opposite of augmentation is diminution. That's shorter notes. Diminution. And so the movement progresses. You go, there's a big, powerful development section in which all of the ideas, including these principal ones that I've just mentioned, are worked up into a big, powerful climax. And at the ultimate climax of the development section, it has several waves based on these different ideas that we've heard. The slow melody that I didn't quote, and the da-da-da, the three-note ominous figure. All of those things come into play, and they all get worked up one way or another. And you can follow that at your leisure, but I'm focusing just on that original opening of the symphony and that second subject augmented version. The climax is all of the versions that we've heard of that opening, all combined on top of each other, contrapuntally, in other words. So what you hear is the opening in diminution, I have to pronounce it. Da-da, 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 ba-da, da-da, 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 and it's doing that. And short notes, jumping all over the place in the strings. And on top of that, you hear the augmented second subject version, but now, instead of being wistful and calm and serene, it's blasted out. I mean, blasted out by the brass, the low brass, the trombones, and the horns canonically following each other. So it's da, da, do, do, da, da, do, do, like that. And it's just unbelievably, incredibly violent and intense and powerful. It's extraordinary. It really is. I can just talk about it. I don't have to talk about it. I can play it. Here it is. Just keep in mind, it's all based on da-da, da-da, that you heard at the very opening of the symphony. In fact, I want to play you the opening of the symphony one more time, just so you get the sense of it, and then we're going to go to the climax. Here's the opening of the symphony again. All right? You remember that. Now, let's listen to how Shostakovich creates the climax of the entire movement out of just that. Basically, those 4 notes, opening 4 notes, or 2-note bitlets. Here it is. Did you catch the brass in long notes? So that blows me away. It really does. You don't have to be conscious of the fact that, the brass are playing an augmented canonic, meaning one part follows the other, an augmented canonic version of what the strings are doing, very, very much quicker, in order to simply be blown away by the anguish, the power, the intensity. But once you feel it and you realize that this is where the music has been headed, this is its destiny, this is its potential being fulfilled, oh my God, it just becomes so much more dramatic, at least in my opinion. It really does. And, it's not that you need to know this right away, or you need to, the first time you hear it, figure it all out. What it means is that the music bears repetition. In other words, every time you hear it, it becomes a little bit more powerful, not less. It doesn't diminish with time, because the way that it's built, the way that Shostakovich is employing his material, guarantees that it will sustain repeated hearings, and you'll hear something different, something more each time you do it. And we could go on endlessly in talking about this. We could talk about how some of the ideas in the first movement reappear in the second and the third and the finale. I mean, the whole symphony is related as a totality. But I just think this first movement says so much about what a compositional genius Shostakovich was. And remember the circumstances in which this symphony was written. He had been denounced for his opera, Lady Macbeth of Mtsensk District. He was in fear for his life. He was effectively banned from Soviet musical life on Stalin's orders. And this was supposed to be the piece in which he rehabilitated himself. And he was supposed to write a work of socialist, realist triumph, which, in theory, he did. I mean, he was very successful. But the musicians in the crowd, the people who were Shostakovich's friends, understood what he was doing. And they understood that he was making a statement. He was making a statement about artistic freedom, about doing what he felt a composer could do using musical means. There is a musical message that works in tandem with the emotional message. I mean, it's very common in talking about this symphony to speak entirely of the finale, the coda of the finale, where the bombast is supposed to be an ironic commentary on the obligatory triumphant ending. That it's supposed to actually be a painful ending, that the triumph is hollow and forced. And it works either way. I mean, that's the ambiguity of it. That's the genius of it. Yes, you could say it's perfectly triumphant, or you could take those grinding dissonance and repeated A's at the end, going as a form of torture, and it works. It works either way. But there is also in this symphony Shostakovich's testament as a musician, saying, "Okay, that may be that, but this is what pure music can do." And in the first movement, because it's setting out the sort of tragic premise, which is going to be heroically resolved in the finale, he doesn't have to worry about the heroic resolution. He could just focus on musical process and making the first movement as powerful a tragic statement as possible. And he does. And he does it in a way which the Soviet authorities never would have understood, because believe me, they did not have any clue as to what monothematic sonata form was. And they couldn't have cared less. But Shostakovich is allying himself with the great symphonic tradition in Western music and saying, this is what a real composer can do. And it doesn't matter what style it allegedly is, the music speaks for itself. And boy, does it ever. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.